And we are here. Hey, everybody, this is Doug Dotz, and you're listening to Caffeinated Campaigns podcast, the show where we put marketing and growth fairs on the pedestal for anyone that touches leads, conversions, and revenue. Today, I'm talking to Heidi Baumgart, the COO of Skidmore Studios and my personal favorite person in the world. Thanks for talking to me, Heidi.
I hope that's not true, but I appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's true.
Oh, gosh. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Glad
all right.
to be here.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's going to be fun. All right,
Yep.
So we want to start it off, Heidi, where give us a good bit of background of who you are, what you're doing, where you've come from, talk about your business, what's happening, let us know who you are.
Yeah, right. Well, I am one of those dorky advertising and marketing people who was intrigued by advertising and marketing probably in junior high, and I went to college for it, and I thought that the only career in that space was for ad agencies, so I got a job in ad agencies, and I worked for a couple of agencies doing both direct-to-consumer kind of customers and B2B customers, and then somewhere along the way, I started my own business in events, which is a different story. We'll leave aside, but I ran my own business called Hydezillas for 5 years, and then when I missed marketing and wanted to come back, I went client side. So I've worked for 3 kind of SMB businesses, probably more small than medium, essentially being like the first head of marketing, building marketing teams, figuring out all the software and all the strategy and all the omnichannel, all the things.
That's rough.
Oftentimes, yeah, it was always a lot. So it was both building brands and building. Oftentimes we were, setting up e-commerce or redoing websites or whatever it was. And so most recently I've come from Arborwear, which is an apparel manufacturer who works in the uniform space for tree care and landscapers. But most recently I went back agency side. So
Congratulations.
I thank you very much. Yes. So I went back to my roots, and so I'm working for an incredible 60-plus-year-old branding studio, and I get to do everything except for marketing now. So I get to my job, yes. So my job is to support all of the people who build all the branding and the marketing. So I'm still totally involved, and I get to market the studio. So I am marketing the studio, but yeah. So that's my story.
That's the story. Great. So as we come to the, what we do here is that we talk about the most impactful marketing failure or growth failure. Marketing growth, same thing. And what we learned from it and what we do differently. So let's start with that. If you have any more, long list, you want to talk about a bunch of them, a little bit of them, whatever you want. We'll just sort of break it down.
Yeah, a few things kind of came to mind because I keep building new tools, and so I've done that for when I was client side for the last 3 companies I was with, and so I think there's just always a good failure you can think about that you like. All the ones I was thinking about before I talked to you, I was like, we knew that wasn't the way to do it, but we just didn't prioritize the time or the money, and a lot of times it was more time, it wasn't even money. For instance, so I worked for a brand, and it was a luxury service, and the main thing we did is we just never made anything mobile responsive.
Ooh.
I mean, that's just a huge fail. And so we had a really robust email platform. We were sending things every 10 days. We knew our clients were coming to look for these things. It was like the content was very like creative consulting. So it'd be like, hey, here's how you style our new products, or here's the latest products, or here's the latest case study, and in event design. And so it was great content, but just everything, the images were huge. It clicked through to a website that wasn't mobile responsive. And at the end of the day, it was just like we couldn't work on our website to invest in the time to make that right. And so we just kind of went with it. When I inherited it, everything was being built like 1,200 pixels wide, and in like super like, and maybe like 1,200 by 200 bits, because that's just how the person who had been doing it like saw essentially a Word document and then cut it up. in Photoshop, all the text was images. So the first thing we did was we got it out of just these like, well, content copy as graphics. I mean, that's like such a big move, right? Like
Yeah.
there's real copy in an email. I mean,
Yeah.
this is pivotal stuff. Hard hitting marketing strategy here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did that first. So then we switched it at least to like 600 pixel wide graphics,
Mhm.
and then, having more like columns and clickable items. But those, they wouldn't always render in columns appropriately. And then it would just click through to a totally not mobile responsive site. And this is like 3 years, 4 years ago, like long enough that like
Wow.
Google was mad at us.
Yeah. Cell phones have been around a
Yeah.
lot longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was interesting. I think we knew our target audience from a content perspective really well. Like, and again, we were getting great feedback. And we did some really good things where like the email matched the site and matched the social and matched sales pieces
Mhm.
and our retail stores, and like it was really cohesive. And it really told a story. But like as far as our customers go, like if you weren't just sitting in your office on your laptop, then it wasn't going to work for you
Yeah.
well. And a lot of our target audience would just be on the road on their phones. So
And, and why couldn't we get it
yeah,
changed?
yeah, it was just, it was a lot of it was just
Ah,
small team, and a lot of it was like we just kept kicking the can on the site. So,
yeah.
also I will say the tool we at the time we were using one of those email tools. Um, I don't know if I should name names, but it was Constant Contact, and
Whew.
there were there were a lot of limitations to that software. I haven't worked in it in years, and actually, most recently, for some volunteerism opportunities I'm in MailChimp, but I'm even seeing like, oh man, I can't do these basic things. You get spoiled when you worked in things like HubSpot. I get
Yeah.
so spoiled with the user friendliness of that.
Yeah. Those
So,
expensive tools, they
y-
have all the bells and whistles, and then you leave them, they're like, oh,
yeah.
that's what I was paying for.
Yep, yep, yeah, you miss it really quick. So that was one of the stories that came to mind, that like don't shortcut on mobile responsiveness, because so many of your customers are on their phones, whether it's reading your email, they're sitting on the couch. They're not,
Yeah.
if they are home or they're on the road or whatever they're doing. So
Yeah, I would add to that, like, don't just assume that things are mobile responsive, because like I've used a lot of
yeah,
tools where the email looks great in the builder. You send it, it's like, oh, half of the email is off to one side of the screen. You have to scroll to the right, scroll to the left, and
yeah,
then, or maybe
yeah,
most of the emails in one spot, but you have one random paragraph that just keeps going and going and going. So
yes.
like, test.
Yes, double check it. Yeah, we won't get into all the times we didn't double check the links and that the landing pages weren't turned on again or still or whatever it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are some cliche ones. Another a biggie that I think it's just kind of a generic. I don't have like numbers of how big of a fail it was, but I know, other than like in the moment, I was like, oh wow, we were not getting the results. But timing is everything.
Mhm.
I can remember, because I've worked for small businesses, so often we'll be like, we knew a product was coming in, we'd have the email ready,
Mhm.
and we were really just waiting for like the product to be received in, and that way it would be like it would be received, it'd be in the ERP, and then it could um, go live on the site
Yeah.
because of all that automation. But so like we'd be waiting and waiting and waiting, and when the product finally came, we'd be like, okay, the email's ready, like just send it. And we wouldn't wait until the most optimal time for the email.
Mhm.
So it would be like, oh, it's, I can't, I'm trying to think of the one specific one I'm thinking of. I want to say we sent it on like Thursday at 3 o'clock,
Mm.
like in the summer
Yeah.
or something like that. And it, it bombed. It bombed so hard and we know that that's not the optimal time to send
Yeah.
our content or start pushing a new product launch. Like our customers aren't checked out, and if they do get the email, they're deleting it because it's almost the weekend and they're trying to finish their week or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so had we would have made more money waiting to send the email like the following Tuesday at 6 a.m. when we knew that was like our optimal time to reach our customers. And instead we're like, no, we just want to get it out and have it done for done's sake.
Yeah.
And the timing's everything.
Timing is
And
everything.
there's so many ways to figure out better times.
Yeah, just
We knew.
wait.
We knew. Just wait. Yeah, patience. Patience.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it was.
there's been many times where I've talked to somebody and they said, "Oh, it doesn't matter when you send it," but it does, and they're like, "You gotta." And the other thing I found, as an aside, actually, is that a lot of people look on the internet. They say the best time to send is at 6:30 on a Wednesday, and they just start sending at that time, and that's the best time for whoever that person is. Your audience is special. Your audience opens at a certain time. So like actually figure out when your audience opens and when your audience interacts instead of just taking what Joe Schmo in California or works for him. And then on top of that,
Hmm.
we got to understand that most of our clients in the online space are in different time zones. So sending at 6 a.m. Eastern doesn't equal 6 a.m. Pacific or Central or Mountain or if you're international, all those other countries. So using all of the different tools, it's not just create and send.
Yeah, we would forget that sometimes, or we just wouldn't end up using the tool because we wanted the whole send to be out and not have to wait for it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, it was just a whole lot of impatience that ended up being crap results. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Timing came to mind, and then I just in coming into Skidmore, we have a newer email platform, and I'm really glad to come in this early on it because there was a whole bunch of strategic thinking on how we were segmenting lists and where like form data were like being put,
Mm-hmm.
and like so if somebody fills out like I want to join your newsletter, or if they just fill out a hi on your form, like they go in different places based on their engagement on the site. So it's really nice to know, like, okay, anybody that we just don't know who they are or what they want because it's just not clear because of the form, and because there's always people trying to find jobs or sell you something.
Yeah,
They're just going into a specific limbo land, and so this is kind of the non-fail. This, because I learned the hard way at a previous place. When we had a whole bunch of sales qualified leads in the database, if you remember that database
I do
very
remember
well,
that
my
database.
friend.
Yes.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I worked on that database for days. But
Yes,
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 so
yes.
yeah, so yes, we had all the sales qualified leads in there, and then we had a whole bunch of lists that we had earned, the opt-in and the permission to use, which were also sales qualified leads, but there was redundancy there
Yeah.
because they'd have like we had so many customers in that industry have like four emails, but it was all the same email. They'd have like first initial, last name, just first name,
Oh
just
man.
last name, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So we had all that. And then we started connecting the site and putting marketing qualified leads in there. And the sales team just never really like learned how to keep functioning with their sales qualified leads around the marketing qualified leads,
Hmm.
or if they really knew how, or like how to filter or whatever it was to get to their leads. They wouldn't then they could work in it, but then they wouldn't keep their leads clean.
Yeah.
and and so it was there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and nobody was tidying. And so we had our best efforts to set it all up, but when we had sales and marketing have used the same database for two wildly different reasons, it became pretty pretty sloppy pretty
Yeah.
fast.
I
Yeah, and costly.
yeah, I remember that database. That was a fun 3 months.
Hey listeners, do you hear the pain in Doug's voice? Do you hear the pain? Yeah.
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 I think that was
It
it.
only got
Yeah,
worse.
that was an impactful failure for both of us. Like
Yeah.
integrating systems and integrating people
Yeah.
change management. Like it it's so important. And if you can't get buy-in from the people that make the rules and the decisions and sort of lead the other people, you're not going to get anywhere. Like we I remember we had people that would love to get on the meeting and be happy. It's like, oh yeah, cool. And then when it comes to execution, it's like, oh, I got to do this thing. I got to do this thing. I got to do this thing. And we could never get over the finish line to get support. And so it's change management, long story short, is important.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that all the stakeholders agree and are actually truly agreeing, not just giving lip service.
Hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, and I think too, like I spend a lot of time trying to educate to get enrollment and to get buy-in for the team that worked in that system. Um, but at the end of the day, they had their goals for the
Yeah.
system, and they were really spread thin. So they didn't have a lot of bandwidth or time for empathy, even if they had it, for how else we needed to use the email marketing system. And so all they saw was when things infringed on their list,
Yep.
when we had co-lists,
Yep.
and so they'd get opt-outs and yeah, being a I think the moral of the story, even though it would have cost us a lot more money, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm having an aha right now. I think actually having two platforms to do B2B
Yeah.
for the sales team to do the B2B, and then separately let marketing do B2B and the D2C stuff that we were doing, because marketing was doing omnichannel marketing. We were segmenting our lists.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of things related to, okay, well, this is, we're only emailing decision makers, and then we're only emailing,
Yeah.
like in this case, whatever segment it was, non-decision makers. And it might have been more cost effective and more performing had we actually separated it.
That is true.
So
That is true. Are they still operating? No, never mind. That's a different conversation.
they are. Yes. Yeah. 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 Gosh, it's just hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah.
But usually when you know you're in a shortcut, it is, or if you know you're being impatient, you are. Like if
Yeah.
it's crossed your mind, slow down, stop. Like you'll get better. Like if you spend more time now, you'll get better performance later. I mean, that's just been the lesson time and again. Like stop and get your house in order.
Yeah. Get the infrastructure in place and think.
Yeah.
Think.
Yeah, because otherwise it's data soup, and then
Yeah.
you can't do the wizardry with the data that's there because it's just soup. It's just soup.
It's just soup. And you got to strain the
It's
soup bit by bit.
Yes. I love a good metaphor, but yeah, yeah. What noodles have we got in there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do we have
Yeah.
some protein, or we have some vegetables? Like what do we have? What's the value
Yes.
here?
Oh my gosh. It all comes down though. I think sometimes, the summary of all the things I'm saying is like, stop kicking the can on all the things, and and maybe you have to do like a parallel rebuild infrastructure,
Yeah.
but get that really, get all the stakeholders to agree, and just pick a couple goals.
Yeah.
Like you can't please everybody. Pick some really impactful goals, build your infrastructure around that, and then either bolt on or find ways to scale later.
Yeah.
So
I mean, to your point, there's this whole concept of working with this group. They have it the impact planner, where you have specific things that will move the business forward, that you have to choose to prioritize even with the day-to-day chaos. So it's like, all right, on a monthly basis, this is the most impactful thing to production and revenue. We need to get it done. And so you schedule it in, and it's there. Everybody agrees you need to get it done. And then even if on Monday we have 100 things need to happen, like, hey guys, I need to spend 2 hours on this impact thing. Oh, but we have a fire. I need to spend 2 hours on this impact thing, because this fire is not going to make us $1 million, but this impact thing will make us $1 million, or save a bunch of effort, or reduce head costs. Whatever it's impactful. So
yep.
on side of just stop kicking the can, prioritizing and choosing and committing to it is important, because if you don't make the choice, then it's never going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, we actually at Skidmore Studio, we work in the EOS, the
Oh, yeah.
entrepreneurial operating system, and there, I mean, everything you just described is such an EOS tenet of how you work.
Oh yeah,
and-
like the 90-day rocks is what it's called or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's, what's funny is after I started working in it here at Skidmore, I realized that in successful leadership places elsewhere, like the way I was kind of working with teams and found success, it was usually in like a similar cadence.
Yeah.
So, some people are like, oh, I don't need this like worksheet or framework, but it's like, okay, you don't have to get all caught up in that.
Yeah.
It's just prioritizing.
Yeah.
And yeah, because you're always going to have the slog, and you're always going to have the clients who are screaming, and you're always going to have people who reply to your emails with the unsubscribe me and not hit the unsubscribe button. That always slays me.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things. And then I'm like, am I supposed to email you back to tell you that I manually unsubscribed you?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're always gonna. There are certain things, no matter your industry or your deal size or your team size, there are always those things you're always gonna have. So at the end of the day, if you can build a good infrastructure and a good habits, Atomic Habits is like my book of the year. If you haven't read it,
I have not read it, but I shall read it.
random
Yeah.
sidebar.
Yeah. Atomic.
James Clear is a genius.
Okay.
It's my second favorite email newsletter I get every week after yours.
Oh,
I'm just
well,
saying.
well, thank you. I'm sure his is better than mine, but still, I appreciate
It's
it.
pretty similar. Yeah, sign up for that. But yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? It's about habits, whether it's human habits or
Organizational
email
habits.
hygiene. Yeah. So yeah, there's my words of wisdom.
Atomic Habits, people. All right. So, I always like to end the thing of, if you could say one thing when it comes to marketing and growth, or anything, business, to the listeners, what would it be?
Oh, my favorite thing that I always think of, and I've tried to teach students I've had and in teams that I've worked with, is you're talking to humans.
Yeah.
And it's hard to remember that, but it's just about the first step, and always your number one priority is your target audience, and they're human beings. And if you can remember who you're talking to and who they are, then no matter what you do, you'll probably find some success. So target audience first.
There you go. All right. So we have, don't kick the can down the road, because it's gonna destroy just life. It's gonna make you hate yourself.
Yes.
Do the hard things. Yeah. Slow down and build those atomic habits. And everybody that we talk to is a human. Even though we know this somewhere far in the back of our minds, we need to remember that we're sending emails, we're texting, we're communicating with humans.
Yep. That's it.
All right.
That's everything. That's all of it.
That's all of it. That's the answer to life, people. All right. Thank you, Heidi. It's been great talking to you. And we're going to wrap this up.
All right. Thanks for having me.